Why you always feel unloved, and the real reason behind the pain. Have you ever found yourself pouring everything you have into a relationship? Your time, your energy, your love, only to end up feeling emotionally empty? You give so much, you try so hard, you do everything in your power to keep the connection alive, you compromise, you sacrifice, you show up day after day with an open heart. And yet, something always feels off. No matter how much love you give, it never seems to be enough. No matter how hard you try to make someone happy, they still seem distant, cold, or uninterested. And you're left wondering, why? Why does it feel like love is something other people receive so effortlessly, while you have to fight for the smallest piece of affection? If you've asked yourself this, if you've ever sat alone, questioning your worth because someone didn't see your value, please know this. You are not alone, and what you're feeling is more common than you think. But more importantly, it's not because you're unlovable. It's not because something is wrong with you, and it's certainly not because you're too much or not enough. What you're experiencing is the result of a deeper emotional pattern, one that began long before any romantic relationship. One that has less to do with the people you choose, and more to do with how you see yourself at the core of your being. You may think your heartbreaks were caused by bad timing, wrong partners, or just plain bad luck. But the truth is much more powerful and far more hopeful. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." What does this mean? It means the relationships you're experiencing, especially the ones that hurt, are not random. They are patterns being repeated, and those patterns are driven by the beliefs you hold about yourself deep in your subconscious. If you carry hidden wounds, beliefs like, "I am not worthy of love," or "I always get left behind," or "People only love me when I give them something," then your mind will seek out relationships that confirm those beliefs. Not intentionally, not because you want pain, but because your unconscious is trying to resolve what was never healed. Each person you attract acts like a mirror. They reflect the parts of you that you haven't accepted, the fears you try to hide, the stories you still believe about your worth. If you believe love has to be earned, you will attract partners who make you prove yourself constantly. If you fear abandonment, you will subconsciously be drawn to people who are emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or detached. If you doubt your value, you will chase those who withhold affection, hoping they'll give you the validation you struggle to give yourself. And so the pattern continues, not because you're cursed, but because your heart is trying to heal through repetition. The pain isn't punishment, it's a message. It's asking you to stop, to look inward, and to ask a very different question. What is this relationship revealing about how I treat myself? Because here's the truth most people never realize. Until you change your internal relationship with yourself, your beliefs, your worth, your self-love, you will continue to attract people who reflect your unhealed wounds instead of your true value. Where the pattern begins. Childhood conditioning. To break the pattern, you must understand where it began. And for most of us, it started in childhood. You see, we don't just learn to love others. We also learn what love means based on how we were treated as children. If you only received love when you behaved, succeeded, or stayed quiet, you may have developed a silent belief. I must earn love. I am not lovable just as I am. If you were made to feel like your emotions were too much, you may have learned to suppress your needs, becoming overly independent, afraid to ask for help, or ashamed of your vulnerability. If your emotional needs were ignored, you may have grown up believing that love is always just out of reach, and that being close to someone means constantly proving your value. These beliefs, though formed in childhood, become the scripts you unknowingly carry into adulthood. And without realizing it, you begin to seek out relationships that replay the emotional dynamics of your early life. Not because you want pain, but because your subconscious wants resolution. The love you've been searching for isn't out there, it's inside. But here's the powerful truth. You don't have to stay stuck in this cycle. You don't have to keep repeating the same pain, the same story, the same heartbreak. You can break free. It begins with seeing the pattern. It deepens with understanding where it came from. And it transforms when you begin to treat yourself the way you've always wanted others to treat you. This is not about blaming yourself, it's about reclaiming your power. It's about realizing that the key to healthy, fulfilling relationships starts with the relationship you have with yourself. And once you begin loving yourself, not just in theory, but in practice, you'll stop chasing people who can't meet you. You'll stop tolerating less than you deserve. You'll stop proving your worth and start protecting your peace. How to radically change your relationship with love. Now that you've begun to understand where your emotional patterns come from, let's take it a step further. Because recognizing the pattern is only the first step. Breaking it, that's where the true transformation begins. But before we move forward, if this message is resonating with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear these words. You never know how deeply a simple message of truth and healing can impact someone's life. And if you'd like to support our work, you can leave a donation by clicking the thanks button below. Every contribution helps us continue creating content that uplifts and empowers. Now, let's return to the journey. It's time to break the cycle. If you've been through relationship after relationship where you felt overlooked, misunderstood, or undervalued, it's time to stop repeating that story. It's time to ask yourself some uncomfortable but necessary questions. Do my relationships always follow the same emotional script? Do I constantly feel like I'm giving more than I'm receiving? Do I attract people who avoid commitment or make me feel like I'm too much? If these questions hit home, you're not alone. And more importantly, it means you're becoming aware. Because once you start noticing recurring themes in your love life, you're no longer trapped by them. You're on your way to breaking free. The truth is, the root of your suffering doesn't come from the people you've dated or loved. It comes from the beliefs you've accepted as truth, beliefs that were planted in you long ago and never questioned. And the most damaging of all is this: I must earn love. This unconscious belief is the silent engine behind your emotional exhaustion. It keeps you chasing love from people who can't give it. It convinces you to work harder, to fix yourself, to prove your worth, when what you actually need is to rest in the truth of your own value. But love isn't meant to be a test. It's not a reward for being perfect. It's not something someone gives you when you finally deserve it. Real love is not transactional. So, how do you break free from this exhausting cycle? You start by withdrawing your focus from the outside, from other people, their approval, their attention, and placing it where it belongs, within yourself. Self-love is the foundation of every relationship. Here's a powerful truth you may have never been told. The love you receive from others will never exceed the love you give to yourself. If you want someone to love you unconditionally, it begins by showing yourself that same level of compassion, without judgment, without guilt, without waiting for some future version of you who is finally enough. Because the more you try to gain love by becoming what others want, the more you disconnect from who you truly are. And that disconnection is the source of your pain. Healing doesn't start by fixing the relationship. It starts by becoming whole within yourself. That means recognizing your emotional needs instead of hiding them, setting boundaries instead of tolerating disrespect, listening to your inner voice instead of silencing it to keep the peace, embracing your sensitivity, your depth, your truth, instead of apologizing for it. Integrating the shadow. Embracing what you've been hiding. To truly change your relationship with love, you must face what you've been afraid to see. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject or suppress because they make us feel weak, vulnerable, or unlovable. These parts might include the fear of being alone, the shame of feeling unworthy, the anger you were taught to bury, the sadness you never gave yourself permission to feel. But here's the secret. What you reject in yourself will always show up in your relationships. If you don't accept your emotional needs, you'll attract people who dismiss them. If you hide your fear of abandonment, you'll be drawn to partners who reinforce it. If you suppress your truth, you'll end up with people who never really see you. You can't heal what you won't face. But when you finally turn toward those hidden parts of you, not with judgment but with compassion, something powerful happens. You stop projecting your pain onto others. You stop choosing people based on your wounds, and you start making space for relationships that are grounded in truth, vulnerability, and real connection. The final truth: love was never meant to be found. It was meant to be remembered. We've been told that love is something we must search for, fight for, or wait for, that it's something out there, held by someone else, given only when we're good enough, attractive enough, or lovable enough. But the deepest truth is this: love is not something outside of you. Love is something you become. It is your natural state. It's who you are underneath the fear, the pain, the conditioning. And the moment you stop looking outward and begin nurturing your inner world, you'll realize that the love you've been seeking was never lost. It was simply buried under layers of false beliefs. You stop begging for crumbs of affection and begin to embody the fullness of love itself. You stop seeking someone to complete you because you now understand. You were never incomplete to begin with. And when you begin to live from this truth, something miraculous happens. You stop chasing, you start attracting, you stop proving, you start choosing, you stop shrinking, you start shining. Love is no longer a goal to reach. It becomes your state of being. Your new beginning starts with you. If this message spoke to your heart, don't just listen, act. Let this be your turning point. Let this be the moment you stop searching and start remembering who you really are. Subscribe to The Way's Secret to receive more videos that help you heal, grow, and awaken. And if there's someone in your life who needs this message, share it with them. Because sometimes one honest message is all it takes to begin a new life. You don't need to wait for love. You are love. And it's time the world sees that. Starting with you.